Hello students, now our second lecture is about metformin. In this lecture we will discuss about metformin, a very important drug, and this drug belongs to the group anti-hyperglycemic biguanides. Anti-hyperglycemic agents are classified in two groups. Group A, agents lowering insulin resistance or insulin sensitizers. Two drugs belong to this class, biguanides and thiazolidinediones. Group B, agents reducing carbohydrate absorption, also known as alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Three drugs belong to this class, acarbose, migitol and voglibose. The term biguanide refers to a group of anti-diabetic drugs that work by preventing the production of glucose in the liver, improving the body's sensitivity towards insulin. That is why this is called insulin sensitizers, reducing the amount of sugar absorbed by the intestine. They are called as anti-hyperglycemic agents because they reduce blood glucose levels without causing hyperglycemia. The only available biguanide medication is metformin, which is commonly used as a first-line treatment for type 2 diabetes. Metformin is usually prescribed as a single treatment, but it can also be combined with other medication like pioglitazone, insulin and other drugs. Now let's talk about history of metformin. Gene Stern was first who identified anti-hyperglycemic effect of metformin. Since their discovery in 1957, guanidine derivatives metformin and fenformin have been used extensively in the management of type 2 diabetes. Since late 1970s, fenformin has gradually fallen out of favor on account of unacceptable incidence of lactic acidosis. As the drug extensively binds to mitochondrial membrane, lactic acidosis is mostly the result of oxidative phosphorylation, and fortunately metformin binds poorly to mitochondrial membranes. That's why you can find very less incidence of lactic acidosis with the use of metformin. Therefore, metformin has remained the cornerstone of oral anti-diabetic treatment and has consistently demonstrated reduction in microvascular as well as macrovascular complications. Metformin and its beneficial role in diabetic patients was extensively studied in different randomized controlled trials and observational studies. This is the only oral anti-hyperglycemic agent which has been found to significantly reduce the risk of macrovascular complications in obese type 2 diabetic patients. And this was studies in UK-PDS study, that is United Kingdom Prospective Diabetes Study. In all other studies, same endpoint was observed, as well as there was 30 to 40% reduction of death from all cause and death from cardiovascular events, and reduction of hospitalization was observed, as you can see in this slide. In a large study with 4,075 type 2 diabetes mellitus subjects, when metformin was compared with other drugs for cardiovascular safety in terms of all-cause mortality, myocardial infarction, stroke, metformin was found to be superior than other anti-diabetic agents. Lesson learned from UK-PDS study. So UK-PDS trial, that was UK Prospective Diabetes Study trial, was the largest trial for the study of role of metformin in risk reduction of cardiovascular related events in type 2 diabetes mellitus patient. This study started from 1977 to 1977, and during this intensive phase Metformin was found to reduce diabetes-related death by 42%, all-cause mortality by 36%, and myocardial infarction by 39%. This study was followed up for next 10 years, starting from 1997 to 2007. And this follow-up period showed the following results. Diabetes-related death reduced to 30%, all-cause mortality 27%, and myocardial infarction 33%. That means benefit observed from metformin use was sustained throughout follow-up period. Reduction in HbA1c was found to be greater than insulin and other oral hypoglycemic agents. So, with this UKpedia study, we learned a lesson that metformin should be the integral part of starting treatment of diabetic patients, and metformin should be used early in the course of disease to reduce the cardiovascular risk on long-term basis. Effect of metformin on body weight observed in UKpedia study. We can see in this slide, as compared to other oral drugs, metformin was associated with less gain in the body weight in same UKpedia study. In a randomized controlled trial, impact of metformin on BMI and body weight composition was observed. In this randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial consisting of 100 severely obese insulin-resistant children ages 6 to 12 years randomized to 1000 milligram metformin twice daily for 6 months. So in this slide, we can see metformin has favorable effect on BMI. So it was concluded that metformin had modest but favorable effect on body weight, body composition, and glucose homeostasis in obese insulin-resistant children participating in a low-intensity weight reduction program. Effect of metformin on lipid profile was also observed in different epidemiological studies, and it was found that as compared to other oral drugs, metformin caused greater reduction in triglyceride levels as shown in this figure. Now we will discuss about mechanism of action of metformin. Very important. Metformin primarily acts by improving insulin sensitivity in the liver and thereby reducing hepatic glucose output. This effect is mediated by potentiation of insulin-mediated suppression of hepatic neoglucogenesis. It also improves peripheral utilization of glucose by improving insulin sensitivity in the muscles and to some extent in adipose tissue. This effect is mediated by translocation of glucose transporters from intracellular pool to the plasma membrane. Furthermore, it reduces absorption of carbohydrate in the gut by interaction with transport system in the intestinal brush border. So various action of metformin on several metabolic and hemostatic parameters are responsible for its salutary effect in reducing macrovascular complications as shown in this table. Metabolic and hematologic effect of metformin: reduce triglyceride, reduce free fatty acids and free fatty acid oxidation, reduce platelet aggregability, decrease plasminogen activator inhibitor 1, increased fibrinolysis, reduce weight gain. Therapeutic consideration. Metformin as a first-line drug. Metformin should be the first oral agent of choice in all obese type 2 diabetes mellitus patients who have failed to respond to lifestyle modification. It should be started at a lower dose of 250 to 500 milligram twice daily, and gradually the dose should be titrated up to a maximum of 2500 to 3000 milligram daily in 2 to 3 divided doses. It can be used as a second line drug. It should also be given to those patients who have failed to respond to um, secretagogues as monotherapy. In such situation, addition of metformin is expected to reduce the mean glucose level by approximately 30% and HbA1c by approximately 0.5%. Availability of slow release formulation is likely to improve compliance as they can be administered twice daily. Their bioavailability and therapeutic efficacy and uniform clinical effects have been proven without any doubt. Their primary benefit is the uniform blood plasma concentration, avoiding peak stand and props associated with immediate release preparations. As a combination with thiazolidinediones, considering metformin's primary action on liver and thiazolidinediones' primary action on adipose tissue, muscles, and beta cells, it may be wise to combine these two agents in obese type 2 diabetic patients. It can be used as a combination with insulin also. It counteracts the weight gain caused by insulin when used in combination. In UKPD's study, use of metformin was associated with delayed and lesser requirement of insulin. Metformin can also be used as an add-on therapy in obese type 2 diabetic metformin. It could be a part of 4-drug therapy along with sulfonylurea, thiazolidinediones, and icarbose. In type 1 diabetes mellitus patients, metformin can be used. Very scanty data is available regarding beneficial effects of metformin in type 1 diabetes. Its beneficial effects include reduction in the insulin-induced weight gain, reduced amplitude of blood sugar fluctuations, and reduced insulin requirement. Now, use of metformin in gestational diabetes mellitus patients. Metformin can be used in gestational diabetes mellitus patients as an alternative to insulin. It is not associated with teratogenicity in humans, unlike fenformin. It has been suggested that metformin could be a logical alternative to use of insulin in patients with GDM and pregnancy-associated glucose intolerance or type 2 diabetes following failure of dietary therapy. Now we will talk about adverse effects of metformin. Anorexia, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and dyspepsia, etc. are some of the common side effects associated with the use of metformin. Gradual titration of the dose can attenuate these side effects. It also decreased intestinal absorption of vitamin B12 and folate. Lactic acidosis is a very serious complication. It is interesting to note that delayed gastric emptying caused by metformin could be of therapeutic use in relieving symptoms of hypoglycemia in the dumping syndrome and following partial gastrectomy. Similarly, addition of metformin to insulin can help stabilize brittle diabetes due to the same mechanism. Does metformin really cause lactic acidosis? Metformin inhibits hepatic neoglucogenesis, resulting in accumulation of neoglucogenic precursors like lactate, pyruvate, and alanine. However, in presence of normal renal function, they never attain toxic levels. So, refraining from its use in presence of known contraindication can obviate the possibility of deadly lactic acidosis complications. So, we should look for the conditions that predispose to lactic acidosis. Here are the conditions that predispose to lactic acidosis: poorly controlled diabetes mellitus, ketosis, prolonged fasting, excessive alcohol intake, hepatic insufficiency, any condition associated with hypoxia. So what are the contraindications? Any condition associated with hypoxia, like acute or chronic disease, that may lead to tissue hypoxia, cardiac or respiratory failure, recent myocardial infarction or shock, hepatic insufficiency, acute alcohol intoxication, renal failure or renal dysfunction, means serum creatinine clearance if less than 60, acute conditions with potential to alter renal function like dehydration, severe infection, IV iodinated contrast media use, shock, diabetic ketoacidosis, diabetic precoma, hypersensitivity to metformin, poorly controlled diabetes mellitus, and prolonged fasting. So, what are the special precautions we should take while using metformin? We need to follow certain precautions while using metformin in certain conditions to avoid unnecessary complications. Like to avoid lactic acidosis, we have to identify patients with risk factor we have already discussed. We should assess the renal function. For that, we need to monitor serum creatinine and GFR, and care should be taken while initiating antihypertensive agents and NSAIDs. While using iodinated contrast media, metformin should be discontinued prior to the test and should start 48 hours after the test. During surgery, discontinue 48 hours before surgery and start 48 hours after surgery. Use in children and adolescents. First, we need to confirm type 2 diabetes mellitus diagnosis before initiating metformin therapy in adolescents and children. Now, metformin in diabetic heart failure patients. Effect of metformin in diabetic heart failure patients was studied in a retrospective cohort trial. Metformin was compared with other drugs for its effect on type 2 diabetes mellitus with heart failure. This graph explains the result from time-dependent multivariable Cox analysis of all-cause mortality for various groups. Overall impact of metformin can be easily judged with sulfonylurea or insulin as a reference. So in this study, metformin found to be better than sulfonylurea or insulin monotherapy. Metformin plus sulfonylurea was better than sulfonylurea alone. Metformin plus insulin was better than insulin alone. Insulin was worse than sulfonylureas, and sulfonylureas plus insulin was worse than metformin plus insulin or metformin plus sulfonylureas. So, result of this retrospective cohort study where metformin was compared with other oral drugs for its favorable effect on diabetic patients with heart failure showed that metformin was associated with low risk of mortality in a diabetic patient with heart failure. Now, we have to discuss use of metformin in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients with chronic kidney disease. There is increasing evidence that the current cutoff point for renal safety in US contraindicated if serum creatinine was more than 1.5 in men or 1.4 in women may be overly restrictive. Accordingly, there are cause to relax prescribing policies to extend the use of this important medication to those with mild, moderate, but stable chronic kidney disease. So many practitioners would continue to prescribe metformin even when the GFR falls to less than 45 to 60, perhaps with dose adjustment to account for reduced renal clearance of the compound. One criteria for stopping the drug is GFR. If GFR is less than 30, we should not use it. Of course, any use in patient with CKD mandates very frequent follow-up of renal function. So, metformin used during pregnancy. Metformin was not found to be unsafe for mother and baby. When metformin was compared with glibenclamide during pregnancy, metformin was found to be far superior to glibenclamide in reducing insulin resistance and hepatic gluconeogenesis and hence beneficial for preservation of beta cell function. Metformin did not show any increase in perinatal complications. Metformin versus glitazone during GDM. In light of data on insulin resistance and insulin secretory defects in babies of diabetic pregnancies, effect of metformin on fetal insulin resistance might be beneficial, but glitazone's cross placenta are not considered safe. Metformin versus insulin. We can safely use insulin during pregnancy, and insulin is actually considered the first choice in pregnancy. But in a recent meta-analysis of 6 studies and 1381 patients, no significant differences was found in maternal fasting or postprandial glycemic control. Use of oral drugs was not associated with risk of neonatal hypoglycemia or increased birth weight or incidence of cesarean section or incidence of large for gestational age babies. No difference in glycemic control or pregnancy outcomes when were compared with insulin. Now we will discuss a little about diabetes and cancer and role of different oral hypoglycemic drugs and metformin. The most common and most lethal form of pancreatic cancer, referred to as pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma or PDAC, has an extraordinary association with diabetes. The relationship between diabetes and pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma are complex. Long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus is a risk factor for pancreatic cancer, but increasing epidemiological data point to PDAC as a cause of diabetes due to unknown mechanism. These facts illustrate that diabetes and PDAC demonstrate dual causality. In that, both long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus is a risk factor for the development of PDAC, and conversely, PDAC is a presumed cause of diabetes in a large number of cases. To explore these issues, a symposium was held at the 76th scientific session of the American Diabetes Association in 2016. The findings are summarized in the next slide. Long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus and chronic pancreatitis that may be associated with type 3 chronic pancreatitis associated diabetes mellitus are risk factor for the development of PDAC. Obesity accompanying type 2 diabetes mellitus may also increase the risk of PDAC due to hyperinsulinemia, the action of adipokines or other factors. PDAC is also a cause of diabetes due to as yet unknown mechanism, and the differentiation of new onset diabetes caused by PDAC, which is distinct from long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus or type 3 chronic pancreatitis associated diabetes mellitus associated with chronic pancreatitis, may allow for the diagnosis and intervention in early stage disease at a point at which curative therapy is possible. Much information needs to be acquired, however, to understand the mechanism of both the contribution of long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus and obesity on the development of PDAC and the cause of PDAC associated diabetes. Now, anti-diabetic medication and the risk of PDAC. Insulin. Use of insulin was associated with an increased risk of PDAC. Sulfonylureas. Use of sulfonylureas has been associated with an increased risk of cancer, but to a less extent than that of insulin. Use of thiazolidinediones was not associated with risk of PDAC, according to a recent review and meta-analysis. Incretin-based therapies, GLP-1, mimics, and DPP-4 inhibitors may have an indirect trophic effect on pancreatic ductal cells. Further studies are required to clarify the association of uh, incretin use and development of PDAC. Metformin. There is a strong experimental evidence to suggest anti-tumor activity of metformin. The fundamental mechanism of metformin involves two possible mechanisms: decreased circulating insulin and IGF levels, and inhibition of mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation, which consequently leads to a energy stress, AMPK activation, and inhibition of mTOR signaling. A study in 2014 identified mitochondrial glycerophosphate dehydrogenase as the major molecular target of metformin. Inhibition of this enzyme resulted in an altered hepatocellular redox state, reduced conversion of lactate and glycerol to glucose, and decreased hepatic gluconeogenesis. To date, at least 12 observational studies have investigated the association of metformin use and risk of PDAC with inconsistent data. Even if the protective effect of metformin is confirmed in future epidemiological studies, more work needs to be done to identify eligible subpopulations that would benefit from metformin for PDAC prevention. Overall, the causal relationship between anti-diabetes therapies and the risk of PDAC cannot be established by the current observational studies. But in the end, we can see that metformin can be used as a preventive measures. So overall, the causal relationship between anti-diabetes therapies and the risk of PDAC cannot be established by the current observational studies. But in the end, we can see that metformin has beneficial role in the prevention of PDAC as compared to other oral drugs and insulin. Now ADA, American Diabetes Association 2015 position statement. ADA position statement 2015 comments on metformin use in type 2 diabetes mellitus patient. In this statement, metformin remains the optimal drug for initial drug therapy and monotherapy. Its low cost, proven safety record, weight neutrality, and possible benefit on cardiovascular outcomes have secured its place as the favorable initial drug of choice. ADA position statement 2015 comments on metformin use for prevention of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Metformin 500 mg may be considered in those at highest risk for developing diabetes, such as those with multiple risk factors, especially if they demonstrate progression of hyperglycemia like A1C 6% despite lifestyle interventions. So metformin can be used for the prevention of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now, role of metformin in today's type 2 diabetes management. Metformin is a safe, effective anti-diabetic drug with long-term protective effects. Combination with other drugs like sulfonylureas or pioglitazone, it can be used safely. Severe lactic acidosis and other adverse effects are unlikely. It is useful in PCOD, associated with reduced incidence of cancer in diabetics, useful in reducing body fat and BMI, useful in HIV patient with HIV-induced lipodystrophy. And this is the end of lecture. I hope all of you must have liked it. Thank you.